We'll get a few more popping in as we go, but we might actually just get started if that's okay, given that it is only half an hour we've got with our free access. So obviously, yeah, for those that might watch this afterwards, this is welcome to our Addressing the Gender Pay Gap free webinar. And these 30-minute webinars are just a free service for anyone who's interested or working in aged care. And we like to sort of introduce things that are, innovative resources and ideas. And this one's one that's close to all of our hearts, working in the sector and the caring professions, and addressing the gender pay gap. And we're really lucky that we've got our wonderful friends, colleagues and sponsors, Prime Super. Specifically wonderful Maria and Louie, to talk to us about how to plan for a healthy and vibrant retirement and that particular lens on bridging that gender savings gap. And of course, our aged care sector employs a high percentage of female employees and leaders, and so it's quite poignant for us. But just before we get started, it is NAIDOC week, and you might notice I've got my earrings on and my little t-shirt that is signifying that. Obviously, with NAIDOC week, we wish all our First Nations colleagues, friends and family members a joyful week. I'm joining you from Wurundjeri country, so always say that, if you want to add where you're from, that's lovely in the chat. We particularly respect the unique spiritual connection First Nations people have with country, lands, waters, community and spiritual guides. And I would love to, obviously all of you are familiar with Meaningful Ageing Australia, so we'll skip that, but I'd really like to welcome warmly, formally, Maria Ganakas and Louie Gorgjieski from Prime Super. And they're a trusted partner and supporter of Meaningful Ageing Australia. So if you think about Meet Akira, guess what? It's thanks to our wonderful friends at Prime Super. If you've attended one of our wonderful leadership lunches, again, that is from, directly supporting from Prime Super. And they're just such wonderful ethical partners. They came up with this idea and for the session today, and I'm so interested to hear more from Maria and Louie. So take it away. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So thank you, Rachel, and a warm welcome to you all today. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to share some of my knowledge with you all. So just wanted to let you know you're welcome to stop me at any time, and we'll also have some time at the end of the session for you to ask any questions that you might have. So this session, it's really been created to empower you and inspire you to take some actions to secure your financial future. So while the information does speak to women, the strategies that I cover and talk about today are relevant to everybody. And in addition, it doesn't matter the level of your role or what level that sort of your role plays in aged care. But if you're a leader, it also puts you in a position to not only support yourself, but also to support and encourage your team to focus, to help them focus on their financial wellness as well. So Louie, next slide. So generally speaking, this presentation, it's just general in nature. It doesn't take into consideration your personal circumstances, your objectives or your needs. So it might not be appropriate for you. So you need to consider that before making, taking any steps or making any decisions. So next slide, Louie, thanks. So why women fall behind in their savings? Well, it's highly likely when you read through these that you will be able to relate to one or more of these. So I can honestly say that over my working career, I can relate to 3 of these. So just taking all this into consideration, I wanted to highlight some interesting statistics. And this is not really to alarm you, but to raise awareness. So men have higher average salaries in 95% of all occupations, including those where women dominate the workforce, and aged care is no exception. This starts very early. The median salary for a female graduate is 12% lower than males. Sorry, Louie, next slide. Thank you. And so just some more sobering stats, I guess. On average, women, we earn $1 million less over our lifetime, and as a result, we retire with approximately $140,000 less in super, which is not an insignificant amount, both in earnings and in savings. So we live longer than men, but we retire with less, and so that means that we run out of money sooner. Women, we are more dependent on the age pension, and more than 40% of women over the age of 60 live in poverty, and this is exacerbated post separation/divorce. And just a final, I guess, negative statistic, older women represent 60% of people who are homeless. And the latest census data shows us that women over the age of 55 experiencing homelessness increased by 31% over the years prior to the census data. So it's actually getting worse. It's not getting better. So enough of the bad news. The good news is that superannuation is really one of the best tools that you can use to help bridge that savings and wealth gap. So superannuation is a concessionally taxed environment. So investment earnings, with the money that you've got in superannuation, your investment earnings are subject to a maximum 15% tax instead of your marginal tax rate. So, you know, on an average, salary tax rates can be, 32% plus the 32% plus the Medicare levy. But if you're a higher income earner, your marginal tax rate can go as high as 47%, including the Medicare levy. So a 15% tax, there's a huge difference in the tax advantages that you get of having your money invested in super. So how superannuation accounts work? Well, very simply, any contributions that you make plus investment returns, less any costs such as the fees and the cost of insurance cover, equals your account balance. It's actually simple maths, but whilst it's important to make sure that your costs are well managed, and that the super fund you're in provides you with competitive fees, the biggest lever to improving your outcomes is your contributions and your investment returns. Okay, so just while we stay on this slide, I'd like to talk about contributions. So when we talk about contributions, everybody knows, as employees, we all know about superannuation guarantee contributions. And superannuation guarantee contributions are now paid at 11.5% of your salary. So when your employer makes your contribution into super, the super fund takes out 15% tax from that, pays it to the tax office, and the rest is invested in your super account for you. So these contributions are known as concessional contributions because you get a tax concession on them. Another type of concessional contribution is what we call a salary sacrifice. So many of you may have heard of a salary sacrifice, and salary sacrifice is beneficial for higher income earners. So this is where you would make a contribution into super from your gross income before tax is deducted at your marginal tax rate. And when that contribution from your salary goes to the super fund takes out 15% tax. So the 15% tax is a replacement for the marginal tax rate you would have paid on that income. And the way that you, so if you're a high income earner, you should consider whether salary sacrifice is appropriate for you. The way that you set it up is you talk to your payroll, and the contribution caps for salary sacrifice and super guarantee contributions is now $30,000 a year. So you need to make sure that your contributions remain within those caps. There are some other rules that might be relevant in your circumstances. So before you go ahead and make those kinds of contributions, you might want to get some clarity, and we'll talk about how you can get that at the end of this session. So yeah, I mean, superannuation is a concessionally taxed environment, and so the government puts restrictions on how much money you can put into superannuation as well. There is another type of contribution. It's called an after-tax contribution, and that's generally money coming from your savings. So it's after you've paid tax on that money, and generally it's the money that's probably sitting in your savings or your bank account. The contribution cap limits that apply to after-tax savings is $120,000 a year, so it's a lot more generous. Or you can bring forward 3 years and you'd have a limit of up to $360,000. But what I want to specifically talk about today, so we talked about salary sacrifice being beneficial for higher income earners, but there's also types of contributions that are beneficial for lower income earners. And one of those contributions is called the government co-contribution. So where your salary is below $60,400, you can make a contribution of up to $1,000 into super from your savings, and you might become eligible for a co-contribution from the government of up to $500. So it caps out at the $1,000 and the $500, but it's still a really good way to, if you're a lower income earner or your partner's a lower income earner, it's a really good way to boost your savings and close that gender savings gap with the help of the government. Now, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to determine the type of contribution that might be beneficial to you in your circumstances. So one way is to talk to someone that might be able to talk you through your circumstances and the kinds of contributions you should make. Another way is that we make available a top up your super calculator on our website, and you just by entering in your salary and the kind of the level of contribution you might want to make, whether it's $1,000, whether it's $500, whether it's $5,000, you enter in the contribution that you want to make, and the calculator determines whether you would be better off making it as a salary sacrifice or as an after-tax contribution, like a government co-contribution, or even, depending on your salary, it could be a combination of both. Okay, so we make it easy for you because sometimes it's not the easiest thing to determine. So next slide, Louie, thanks. So I might pause there. Is there any questions? And I can't see hands. So Louie, you might have to step in if there's a hand, or just yell out if you have a question. No? Okay, I'll keep going on. So with superannuation, your money is invested. And just to give you an insight of what that might look like and what kinds of returns superannuation can achieve, I've brought up Prime Super's investment options in super, and I've also, this slide also includes the returns that we've achieved in the past. So it tells you what the different investment options that are available and the returns that have been achieved both over the short term and the long term. But what you need to remember is that super is a long-term investment. So what we focus on is trying to achieve, and what you should focus on is trying to achieve consistently good long-term returns that are basically above average. And you've got to remember, when you look at returns like these, and some returns look fantastic, some of the short-term returns don't look so great, but when you look at the longer term, they sort of even themselves out. But what you've got to remember when you look at returns like this is telling you historically what has happened. It's not a guarantee of future returns, but it can be used as a guide. When you look at the investment options, you can see at the top something called My Super, and that super option is actually the default fund investment option. So if, for example, you become a Prime Super member, if you don't make an investment choice, this is where your money gets invested. And it's essentially a diversified fund that gives you exposure to all the different asset classes, such as property, international shares, Australian shares. It's also got some cash and fixed interest there. And it's basically positioned sort of for the long term, but it's there to manage some of the risk, and diversifying across different asset classes helps to do that as well. So if you join a fund and you never make an investment choice, you would generally be defaulted into the default investment option, ours being that My Super option. It's also known as what you would call a balanced fund as well. But you can also choose your own, make your own investment choices as well. So you can go higher growth, or you can invest more conservatively if you wanted to. So that slide is a good lead into the next slide, which is the power of contributions. And in fact, this slide not only talks to the power of contributions, but it also talks to the power of compounding. So when you look at the bottom line on the graph, that shows someone starting with 2% at $2,000 at the beginning. They don't make any additional contributions into this particular account, but it's invested and it's returning an 8% return. So what you can see that even with $2,000, and if you make no contributions, after 20 years, you end up with a reasonable amount of money for no more effort. Essentially, your money is working for you. And just as a rule of thumb, if you make an investment and you achieve a return of 7%, a net return of 7%, you essentially can double your investment every 10 years, okay? But so this slide not only talks to the power of compounding on good returns, so the longer your money's invested, the better your outcomes. It also talks to the difference a very small additional regular contribution can make. So the top line on the graph shows the same starting point, an 8%, $2,000 starting investment, where it's achieving 8% per annum. But this person is also putting in $50 a month. And I think we would all agree that even with the cost of living and everything going on, $50 a month is not the biggest sacrifice to make. And most of us just wouldn't miss that money. We could spend it, I'm sure, but we wouldn't miss that money if it wasn't coming through in our pay packet every month. So just that small contribution makes such a big difference over a 20-year investment timeframe. And I think there's a very powerful message there that even the smallest amount can make the biggest difference. Next slide, Louie. Thank you. So basically, I think our biggest message here is knowledge is power. And I'll just finish off with some of the key things some of the key takeaways for you to focus on moving forward. And the most important thing is taking control of your super. Your super is your own savings. It's actually real money. it's money that will become available to you in the future. So it's so important to you to know what you have and where you have it. If you look after it, it will look after you. And if you have multiple accounts, you really need to think about taking some steps to choose the right fund for you and think about consolidating those super accounts, which should help you reduce your costs and also make it easier for you to manage as well. I think it's very important for you to consider making some additional contributions as well. Even the smallest amounts can make a big difference. There is something that I talked about, the government co-contribution. There's also something called a spouse contribution. We've got some information on the spouse contribution on our website. It's for you or your partner. If you're a lower income earner, it's another way of boosting your super savings. Importantly, learn more about super and access some advice. We've got lots of information on our website. We've got some fabulous tools. I spoke to you about the Top Up Your Super calculator. It's really quite an easy to use tool. We've also got a retirement illustrator where it helps you work out the kind of money you might like to spend in retirement and what superannuation balance you should be aiming for, because that's different for everybody as well. And we've also got another calculator, which it's in our Women in Super section. And what that does is you put in your age and it tells you the average balance for someone your age in superannuation. And that way you can sort of determine whether you're on track or you're behind or you're ahead. I think that's quite valuable as well. But what I would also like to do is extend an invitation for you all to reach out and speak to one of our superannuation specialists over the telephone. It doesn't matter if you're a Prime Super member or not. We're happy to spend some time with you to help clarify some of the rules for you. And we'll send the details through to Rachel, and she can share that with you. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. I hope you got some value out of that, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. We've still got a few minutes left. Oh, thanks for the claps, Tash. Nice to see that it's of benefit for you.
Thanks, Tash. Okay, well, thank you.
Well, if you've got some questions there, please, do reach out. We certainly can vouch for the fact that Prime Super Louie and Maria, you've just fantastic. You are so dedicated to just providing these resources and tools for people so that they can harness their financial well-being, and that's really important for us, particularly in our caring sector. So I just want to say thank you so much for making time today to present this. And again, this has been recorded. So if this is something that you want to watch again, or maybe you missed the beginning of it, thoroughly encourage you to rewatch it, share it with others. We really hope that this has been helpful for all of you. Thank you so much for joining. And we hope you have a beautiful rest of your week. Thank you so much.